I'm very excited to be here with Dr. Jerrold Jackson, who leads Solution Developer Enablement at the Mayo Clinic Platform. Jerrold and I have known each other a long time, and I had the good fortune to even call him a colleague briefly. And I can't think of a better person to respond to what we've heard from our original article and the community around building sustainable competitive advantage for digital health companies. Jerrold, maybe brief intro.
Thank you, Dr. Adam Kaufman, for the kind words. Always enjoyed working with you and continuing to work with you. So I do lead the Solution Studio program, partner enablement at Mayo Clinic Platform. Been at Mayo for about a year now and enjoying thinking about how Mayo Clinic in 2025 can really work with outside companies. It's almost like there's a moral mandate for Mayo to think about how to enable others and work with others in really meaningful ways, ultimately positively impacting the lives of patients. So super excited to be here, and let's get started.
Your experience in digital health, but also in adjacent fields, gives you a great perspective. And for those who don't know, Mayo Clinic Platform works directly with dozens of digital health companies, and you've probably had conversations with hundreds in that context. So let's just start with the top level question. Do you think digital health companies can build sustainable competitive differentiation?
Yeah, I do. I do think that differentiation is possible. I think a couple things are commoditized, and then there are true competitive advantages, moats, et cetera. Everyone's using AI these days and automation, the new buzzword and concept, and frameworks are agentic. And as exciting as those are, the same issue I think that we're solving for has been around for decades. What are you solving for? What's the use case, right? And then what's your business plan that you wrap around it? So I think there still are just some tried and true moats that companies can build. And then organizations like Mayo Clinic Platform are primarily here to enable differentiation. And we've seen certain companies come through and do that, big and small, early and more mid or late stage. It's exciting to be a part of the journey for some of those companies.
We had some real disagreement in kind of the conversation, and so maybe we'll start with some of that. I think originally, when I had started in digital health, I thought great technology, maybe even a patent, certainly regulatory approval, those were going to provide a sustainable moat. My current belief is that those actually do not provide a sustainable moat. And if anything, regulatory approval, a patent gets competed away and almost becomes a kind of a minimum barrier to entry. And unlike an industry like Google and search, where if you're just clearly better, it sustains and you win, being clearly better technologically doesn't seem, this is my opinion, to win. We had others, Lee Shapiro argued, I think convincingly, John Asselone from GoodRx and now Amino also argued that, yeah, that first phase doesn't sustain, but that you learn and you get to build a flywheel of learning actually can provide something sustainable. What's your take on technology itself being a sustainable competitive advantage?
I do think that there are very few verticals, especially within health tech, that we can look at where the technology itself is not becoming increasingly commoditized. Not surprisingly, there are, I think, some macro trends happening here between ambient and, let's say, the whole suite of RCM-based solutions. The market is seeing a number of ambient solutions and companies providing ambient solutions beginning to pick up other aspects of solutions so that they appear as less of a point solution and more of a holistic platform. And we see RCM and we see other medical coding companies, et cetera, who are finding different ways to creatively adopt other features so that they appear as less of a point solution. I think technology as a moat is maybe a bit challenging. There are some, I think, ways to create some differentiation and a bit of a moat through protectable IP, proprietary primary data that your solution generates that no other solution could generate. A number of companies have chosen to not even pursue patent protection, instead to call themselves trade secret. Regulatory is also interesting. By no means would I attempt to speak for all of the institutional investment community, but a number of my friends who do work across the institutional investment space are growing less and less excited about the capital intensive regulatory process. And I think that from a regulatory perspective, we're still figuring out where this goes, especially when we talk about AI-enabled tech and/or automation that brushes up against clinical decision support. I don't think that technology itself, nor do I think that having FDA approval, for example, is a sustainable strategy for differentiation.
If I combine what you're saying, which is the single moment of having a great piece of technology ends up looking like a point solution, or having something that's even regulated maybe provides a momentary differentiation, but won't sustain, will get competed away. My question for you is then, if at the end, the companies that build sustainable differentiation are doing it by entering other markets, building broader suites. How is that different from just being operationally excellent? It sounds like that's what we'd say about any company who just can execute across multiple dimensions. And ultimately, that's going to win, but that's maybe a scary place for early stage digital health companies. Because what we're saying is to win long term, you just have to be great at execution. And there's no one thing that's going to give you that moat. Is that a fair interpretation?
I think that's spot on. We can't forget that being excellent tactically remains really important. Excellence has not left the chat, has not left the room, right? As I speak with the other side of the market, the demand side, so let's say healthcare providers, those that are purchasing solutions, there's still some level of skepticism, I think, around the latest and greatest fully autonomous, potentially high risk if we're wrong AI solutions. And we're still seeing a ton of traction on solutions that reduce administrative burden. And frankly, a lot of the demand side, healthcare providers, so those who are buying solutions, are less hypnotized by the fact that you say that you're using AI and that your solution is agentic. I think instead does it work? Can I understand it enough to where I believe that the CISO at my organization will sign off and it won't be caught up in third-party risk management for 6 to 9 months. So it's really just, can the solution get the job done?
One area that I think a lot of people did think you could build sustainable competitive advantage is through partnerships and distribution, understanding how to live in the ecosystem more broadly. Do you agree with that?
100%. I think that ultimately, when it comes down to it, especially when you're in the world of where there's just tons of point solutions popping up, right? The end goal, how do we work together? How do we enable? There is quite a bit of literature out there and thinking around pipeline business models versus platform business models. And the platform one is truly the one that embraces the ecosystem where network effects that are generated. How does everyone in the ecosystem benefit by simply being an active and willing participant, member, actor within that ecosystem? And in this case, we're talking everyone from the folks that are building solutions to the bigger players that are purchasing them to the actors within the ecosystem that provide some level of infrastructure or perhaps data that powers solutions. So each of those stakeholders can benefit from the ecosystem as they should, right? In ways that feel somewhat mutual and bi-directional. If we can move in that direction, I think healthcare in general moves forward. Really, that is part of the genesis and the thinking behind Mayo Clinic launching a platform business model in the first place. Almost out of moral obligation that only a place like Mayo Clinic, or really among places like Mayo Clinic, could such an approach to business be launched. When you have a generalist in sub-Saharan Africa who can leverage highly specialized AI-supported, perhaps agentic, right, solutions that assist and aid that physician in driving clinical support as a specialist would, that's also a derivative of an ecosystem of a platform business model.
And I think if I put together what you were saying in your last answer with this, there's just an incredibly high cost to bring a solution to a health system, right? You were describing 9 months and will the CSO sign off, and incredibly high cost to get it deployed and to get usage of it. And so I think one way to think about sustainable advantage in the partnerships is relationships that can facilitate those transactions, can spread the cost of doing that across more solutions. And there's only so many slots that any organization has, so living in those ecosystems becomes a moat against others who are trying to do that.
Correct. And here's the truth too. You may, let's say that Adam, you created a solution and I created one, and they're both in the same sort of vertical. They're both the same type of solution. It's likely not the case that the underlying IP is exactly the same. This is a large ecosystem. There's room for both of us to operate, hopefully in ways that create sustainable business, but also create high levels of impact for patients in the case of healthcare.
Dr. Jackson, really appreciate it. I think you've summarized nicely what the article originally said and a lot of the conversation in the community since. Any last comments?
No, I would just say, for anyone whose interest is piqued by this, I'm happy to entertain all conversations. And just anyone who's interested in geeking out on this topic, I'm always game to have conversations around how to create sustainable business models and impactful businesses in general. Once an entrepreneur, always an entrepreneur. And so I wear that hat wherever I go.
I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.